Zara said it flatly at breakfast, like she was announcing a dentist appointment. I'm seeing Wes every weekend now. You'll have to deal with it. I looked up from my coffee, studied her face for a moment, then reached for my phone. What dates are we talking about? She blinked. That wasn't the reaction she'd prepared for. What? Dates. I need to adjust my schedule. I opened my calendar app and waited, pen hovering over my notepad like I was taking a work order. 23 years as a contractor teaches you that details matter more than emotions. Every Friday through Sunday, she said, her voice losing some of its edge. Starting this week. I wrote it down. Neat block letters, filed it under ZID, weekend absences. No scenes, no ultimatums, no begging her to reconsider what we'd built together in this restored Victorian house that I'd spent 5 years renovating with my own hands. Anything else I should know? I asked, taking another sip of coffee. Zara's mouth opened, then closed. She'd loaded her weapon for a fight, but I wasn't giving her a target. After a moment, she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I'll be back Sunday night. The house felt different after she left. Quieter, but not empty. More like a workshop where I could finally concentrate on the project at hand. I walked down to my basement office, a space Zara never bothered with because it smelled like sawdust and old coffee. I pulled out a fresh legal pad and wrote Wes Farrow at the top. Then I opened my laptop and got to work. Public records are surprisingly easy to access when you know where to look. Marriage certificates, property deeds, business licenses, all there for anyone with patience and an internet connection. Within an hour, I had Wes Farrow's complete profile spread across my desk. Married to Ayla Farrow for 12 years. Joint owners of a house on Maple Street, 3 blocks from the harbor. She ran a bakery downtown called Rising Tide. He worked in real estate development, the kind that turned working-class neighborhoods into boutique shopping districts. I leaned back in my chair and studied the marriage certificate, filed 8 months before Zara and I got married. Still active, no divorce proceedings on record. Interesting. My phone buzzed with a text from Colin, my oldest friend and the only cop in town who still drank at the same bar where we'd wasted our 20s. Heard Zara's got weekend plans. You okay? I typed back, never better. Want to grab a drink tonight? The Anchorage, 8 o'clock. The Anchorage hadn't changed since we were 25. Same sticky floors, same neon signs advertising beers that went out of style in the 80s, same crowd of locals who treated gossip like currency. Colin was already at our usual table when I walked in, nursing a bottle and watching the Red Sox lose on the mounted television. So, he said without looking at me. Want to talk about it? Nothing to talk about. I signaled the bartender for a beer. Zara's seeing her ex on weekends. I'm adjusting my schedule accordingly. Colin finally turned to look at me. That's it? No drama? What's the point? She made her choice. Now I make mine. And what choice is that? I took a long pull from my beer and watched the game for a moment. Information gathering. Colin raised an eyebrow. That sounds ominous. That sounds practical. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo I'd found on Wes Farrow's company website. Recognize him? Colin squinted at the screen. Yeah, that's the guy who's been trying to buy up the waterfront properties. Real smooth talker. Why? That's Zara's ex. Huh? Colin studied the photo more carefully. Married. Very. Colin's expression shifted from concern to something approaching amusement. And his wife doesn't know about Zara? I doubt it. What are you thinking? I finished my beer and stood up. I'm thinking I need to visit Rising Tide Bakery tomorrow morning. I hear they make excellent coffee. The next morning, I drove downtown and parked across from Rising Tide. Through the window, I could see a woman arranging pastries in a display case. She had dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and moved with the efficient grace of someone who'd been running her own business for years. I waited until the morning rush died down, then walked in. The smell of fresh bread and cinnamon rolls made my stomach growl. I'd skipped breakfast, too focused on the task ahead. Good morning, she said, looking up with a genuine smile. What can I get you? Coffee, black, and whatever you recommend for someone who hasn't eaten yet today. Long night? Long week. I studied her face while she prepared my order. She had laugh lines around her eyes and flour under her fingernails. Real, grounded. Nothing like the polished image Zara projected at her public relations firm. I'm Brooks, I said when she handed me the coffee. Just moved to the neighborhood. Ayla, welcome to town. She paused, studying my face. You look familiar. Do you work around here? Contractor, Carvin Construction. I probably worked on half the houses in this area at some point. That explains it. I'm good with faces. She leaned against the counter. What kind of work do you do? Renovations, mostly. Old houses that need new life. I sipped the coffee. It was excellent. This place has good bones. Original tin ceiling? 1892. The previous owner wanted to cover it with drop tiles, but I couldn't bring myself to hide something that beautiful. We talked about the building's history for a few minutes. She was knowledgeable and passionate about preservation, the kind of person who understood that some things were worth saving. When I left, I had her business card and an invitation to come back any time. I also had confirmation that she had no idea her husband was spending weekends with another woman. That evening, I sat in my basement office and organized what I'd learned. Wes Farrow was playing a dangerous game, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated the importance of details. Marriage certificates don't lie, property records don't lie, and wives who run successful businesses don't appreciate being made fools of. I opened a new file on my computer and labeled it Weekend Project. Friday morning, Zara packed her overnight bag with the careful attention of someone preparing for a performance. She'd bought new clothes, things I hadn't seen before, expensive items that didn't match her usual practical style. "I'll be back Sunday evening," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Drive safe." I didn't look up from my newspaper. After her car disappeared down the street, I walked to my truck and drove to the marina. Wes Farrow kept a boat there, a sleek 30-footer that probably cost more than most people's houses. I parked where I could see the dock and waited. They showed up around noon. Zara wore one of her new outfits, a sundress that caught the ocean breeze. Wes had his arm around her waist, proprietary and confident. They looked like a magazine ad for weekend getaways. I took photos with my phone's zoom lens. Nothing invasive, just documentation, public spaces, public behavior, the kind of evidence that would matter later. I followed them at a distance as they walked through town. They had lunch at the expensive seafood place overlooking the harbor, the one that charged $30 for fish and chips. Wes paid with a credit card, signed the receipt with a flourish. More documentation. They spent the afternoon shopping, Wes buying Zara, things she didn't need with money that should have been going toward his mortgage with Ayla. I watched from coffee shops and park benches, building a timeline of their public displays. That evening, I drove past Wes's house on Maple Street. His car was in the driveway, but the lights were off. Either he was being very careful, or Ayla wasn't home. I made a note to find out Ayla's weekend schedule. Saturday morning, I returned to Rising Tide. Ayla was there alone, preparing for the weekend rush. "Brooks," she said, genuinely pleased to see me. "Back for more coffee?" "And one of those cinnamon rolls. They've been on my mind since yesterday." She laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." She prepared my order and leaned against the counter. "So what brings you downtown on a Saturday? Most contractors I know are either working or sleeping in." "My wife's out of town for the weekend. Thought I'd explore a bit." "Where did she go?" "Visiting friends." I sipped my coffee and studied Ayla's expression. "What about your husband? Does he help out here on weekends?" Something flickered across her face. Annoyance, maybe, or disappointment. "Wes has his own projects. Real estate doesn't take weekends off, apparently." "Sounds demanding." "It is. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to his phone instead of him." She forced a smile. "But that's the price of ambition, right?" I nodded sympathetically. "My wife's the same way. Always somewhere else. Always busy with something more important than home." "It's hard," Ayla said quietly. "You build a life with someone, and then they just drift away." "Maybe they don't drift. Maybe they jump." She looked at me sharply. "What do you mean?" "Nothing. Just thinking out loud." I finished my coffee and left money on the counter. "Thanks for the coffee, Ayla. See you Monday." I spent the rest of Saturday gathering more information. I drove past Wes's office building, his country club, the restaurants where he took clients. I was building a map of his life, looking for patterns and vulnerabilities. Sunday afternoon, I positioned myself at a coffee shop with a view of the marina. Zara and Wes returned to his boat around 2 o'clock. They looked relaxed, satisfied with their weekend performance. Wes helped Zara into his car, kissed her goodbye, and drove her back to our house. I waited 30 minutes, then followed. When I got home, Zara was unpacking her bag in our bedroom. She looked up when I walked in, her expression carefully neutral. "How was your weekend?" she asked. "Productive. Yours?" "Nice. Relaxing." I nodded and went downstairs to my office. I uploaded the photos from my phone to my computer, organized them by date and time, and cross-referenced them with credit card receipts I'd photographed. The timeline was clear. Zara and Wes had spent the entire weekend together, in public, acting like a couple, but they had been careful to avoid anywhere Ayla might see them. I opened a new document and began typing up my observations. Facts only, no interpretation, dates, times, locations, behaviors, the kind of report I might prepare for a building inspector or insurance adjuster. When I finished, I saved 3 copies to different locations and printed a 4th for my files. Then I started planning my next move. Monday morning, I returned to Rising Tide. Ayla was restocking the pastry case, humming softly to herself. She looked up when the door chimed and smiled. "You're becoming a regular," she said. "Good coffee's hard to find." I ordered my usual and watched her work. "You seem happy today." "It's Monday, fresh start to the week." She handed me my coffee. "Wes actually came home early last night. We had dinner together, watched a movie. It felt like old times." I felt something twist in my stomach. Not jealousy, but something darker. Anger, maybe, at the casual cruelty of it all. Wes spending the weekend with my wife, then coming home to play the devoted husband. "That's nice," I said. "It's important to make time for each other." "It is. Sometimes I think we get so caught up in our separate lives that we forget we're supposed to be partners." Some people forget more than others. Ayla tilted her head, studying my expression. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." "Aren't we all?" She was quiet for a moment, then leaned forward slightly. "Brooks, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Yesterday, when you mentioned wives jumping instead of drifting, what did you mean?" I met her eyes directly. "I meant that sometimes people don't grow apart naturally. Sometimes they make deliberate choices to be somewhere else." "With someone else?" "Sometimes?" Ayla's face went very still. "Do you think your wife is having an affair?" I took a sip of coffee, considering my words carefully. "I think my wife is making choices that prioritize other people over our marriage." "And you're okay with that?" "I'm gathering information before I decide what I'm okay with." Ayla nodded slowly. "Information is good. Better than assumptions?" "Much better." I finished my coffee and stood up. "Thanks, Ayla. See you tomorrow." As I walked to my truck, I could feel her watching me through the window. She was smart enough to read between the lines, and I'd given her just enough to start asking her own questions. The foundation was set. Now I needed to start building. Tuesday morning brought rain and a text from Zara. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to Rising Tide and found Ayla arranging fresh flowers in a vase by the window. The bakery was empty except for an elderly woman reading a newspaper in the corner. "Morning, Brooks. The usual?" "Please." I waited until she prepared my coffee, then said quietly, "Can we talk somewhere private?" Her hand stilled on the espresso machine. "Is everything okay?" "That depends on how you define okay." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She glanced at the woman in the corner, who was absorbed in the crossword puzzle, then gestured toward a small table in the back. "Mrs. Henderson, I'll be right back if you need anything." We sat across from each other, and I pulled out my phone. "I need to show you something, but I want you to know that I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to give you the same information I wish someone had given me." Ayla's face went pale. "What kind of information?" I opened the photo gallery and turned the phone toward her. The first image showed Wes and Zara walking hand in hand along the harbor. The timestamp read Saturday, 12:47 p.m. Ayla stared at the screen for a long moment. "Who is she?" "My wife, Zara." "Your wife?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "The one who's been visiting friends on weekends?" "The same friends Wes has been spending time with, apparently." I swiped to the next photo, Wes kissing Zara outside the seafood restaurant, then another of them getting into his car together. The timestamps told the story of their entire Saturday afternoon. Ayla's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the phone. "How long have you known?" "I started suspecting 2 weeks ago. I've been documenting it since then." 2 weeks. She looked up at me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "He came home Sunday night and told me he'd spent the weekend working on a new development project. He even showed me the property listings." "I have more photos if you need them. Different weekends, same pattern." "No." She pushed the phone back toward me. "I've seen enough." We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the rain against the windows. Mrs. Henderson turned a page of her newspaper, oblivious to the conversation happening 10 feet away. "What are you going to do?" Ayla asked finally. "That depends on what you want to do." "I don't understand." I leaned forward slightly. "Zara thinks she's controlling this situation. She announces her weekend plans like she's doing me a favor by being honest about it. Wes probably thinks he's clever. keeping his wife and his girlfriend in separate worlds. And you think they're wrong? I think they've underestimated both of us. I met her eyes. Zara wants to humiliate me by flaunting her affair, but she's made one crucial mistake. She assumes I'll react the way she expects. Anger, jealousy, desperate attempts to win her back. And you won't? I don't fight battles I can't win, but I also don't surrender without making sure my opponents understand the cost of victory. Ayla studied my face carefully. What are you proposing? A conversation. Next Sunday, when Zara comes home from her weekend with Wes, she'll find us having coffee at my kitchen table, just two people who've discovered they have something in common. You want to confront them together? I want to give them the same courtesy they've given us, complete honesty about the situation. Ayla was quiet for a long moment, thinking it through. What happens after that? That depends on how they react. But at minimum, they'll lose the advantage of secrecy. No more separate worlds, no more careful scheduling, everything out in the open. And if they don't care, if they just decide to be together openly, then at least we'll know where we stand. No more wondering, no more being made fools of in our own marriages. Mrs. Henderson stood up and approached the counter. Ayla, dear, I'll take a blueberry muffin for the road. Of course, Mrs. Henderson. Ayla rose and wrapped the muffin, her movements automatic while her mind processed our conversation. After Mrs. Henderson left, Ayla returned to our table. If I do this, if I help you, what guarantee do I have that you're not just using me to hurt your wife? None, I said honestly. But what guarantee do you have that Wes won't keep lying to you for months or years? At least this way, you'll know the truth. The truth, she laughed bitterly. 12 years of marriage, and I'm getting the truth from a stranger. Sometimes strangers are the only ones willing to tell it. Ayla nodded slowly. Sunday morning, what time? 10 o'clock. Zara usually gets home around 10:30. I'll be there. I wrote my address on a napkin and slid it across the table. Thank you, Ayla. Don't thank me yet. I might lose my nerve. You won't, I said, standing up. You're stronger than they think. That's why they've been able to lie to you. They assume you'll accept whatever story they tell you. And you think I won't? I think you deserve better than being treated like a fool in your own life. I left money for the coffee and walked out into the rain. Behind me, I could see Ayla sitting at the table, staring at the address I'd written. She was making her own calculations now, weighing the cost of action against the price of continued ignorance. By the time I reached my truck, I was confident she'd made her choice. Wednesday and Thursday passed quietly. Zara worked late both nights, claiming deadlines and client emergencies. I didn't question her stories or ask for details. I simply noted the times and continued my preparations. Friday morning, she packed her bag again. This time, she seemed more confident, more settled in her routine. I'll see you Sunday night, she said, kissing my cheek like we were an old married couple with a comfortable arrangement. Have a good weekend. After she left, I spent the day cleaning the house and preparing for Sunday's conversation. I set up the kitchen table with 3 chairs instead of 2, arranged my documentation in neat folders, and made sure the coffee maker was ready. Saturday, I drove past Wes's house and saw both cars in the driveway. They weren't being particularly careful anymore, confident in their separate worlds. Sunday morning, I made coffee and waited. At exactly 10 o'clock, Ayla knocked on my front door. She looked nervous but determined, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater. I almost didn't come. But you did. I did. She looked around the kitchen, taking in the restored cabinets and original hardwood floors. This is beautiful work. Thank you. Coffee? Please. We sat at the kitchen table and waited. At 10:28, I heard Zara's car in the driveway. Ready? I asked. Ayla nodded. Ready. The front door opened and Zara called out. Brooks, I'm home. In the kitchen? I replied. Footsteps in the hallway, then Zara appeared in the doorway. She stopped short when she saw Ayla, her expression shifting from surprise to confusion to something approaching alarm. Oh, I didn't know we had company. Zara, I'd like you to meet Ayla Farrow. Ayla, this is my wife, Zara. Zara's face went completely white. She looked from me to Ayla and back again, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Please, sit down, I said calmly. We have some things to discuss. Zara remained frozen in the doorway, her weekend bag sliding off her shoulder to hit the floor with a soft thud. Ayla sat perfectly still, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug like it was anchoring her to reality. I don't understand, Zara said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I think you do. I gestured to the empty chair. Please sit down. No. Zara's voice grew stronger. No, I'm not sitting down until someone explains what's happening here. Your husband didn't mention he was married, Ayla said quietly, looking directly at Zara. Did he? The color that had drained from Zara's face came rushing back. What are you talking about? I opened the folder in front of me and pulled out the first photograph. Wes and Zara walking hand in hand along the harbor. I placed it on the table where both women could see it. Saturday, October 14th, 12:47 p.m. I added the second photo. 1:15 p.m., Harborview Restaurant. A third photo joined the others. 2:30 p.m., getting into Wes's car. You followed me? Zara's voice cracked with outrage and something else, fear. I documented your public activities. There's a difference. I looked at Ayla. Would you like to tell her where Wes said he was that weekend? Working, Ayla said, her voice steady now. He showed me property listings and talked about difficult clients. He even complained about having to work weekends. Zara sank into the chair, her legs no longer supporting her. This isn't... You weren't what? I asked. Having an affair? Lying to both of your spouses? Making plans for a future that requires destroying 2 marriages? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Ayla leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my husband has been living a double life for weeks. Months, I corrected. I have photos going back to August. Zara's head snapped up. Months? You've been spying on me for months? I've been paying attention to my wife for months, something I apparently should have started doing sooner. I spread out more photographs, creating a timeline across the table. Zara and Wes at different restaurants, walking through different parts of town, always together, always intimate. He told me he was getting divorced, Zara said desperately, looking at Ayla. He said you'd grown apart, that you were just waiting for the right time to separate. Ayla's laugh was sharp and bitter. Divorced? We just renewed our mortgage last month. We're planning a vacation for Christmas. Does that sound like a couple getting divorced? But he said... He lied. I gathered the photos and returned them to the folder. To both of you. You thought you were stealing someone's husband, and Ayla thought she had a marriage worth saving. Zara turned to me, her eyes bright with tears. Why are you doing this? Why are you humiliating me like this? I'm not humiliating you. I'm giving you the same honesty you gave me when you announced your weekend plans. I met her eyes directly. You wanted everything out in the open. Now it is. That's not... I didn't mean... You didn't mean for there to be consequences. You thought you could control the narrative, manage everyone's reactions, keep your affair and your marriage in separate compartments. Ayla stood up abruptly. I need to go. Ayla, wait, Zara called out. Wait for what? For you to explain how you've been sleeping with my husband while I've been working 16-hour days to keep our business afloat? Ayla's composure finally cracked. Wait for you to tell me how this is somehow my fault for not paying enough attention to him? I didn't know you existed, Zara said quietly. And whose fault is that? Did you ask if he was married? Did you care? Zara had no answer for that. Ayla picked up her purse. Thank you, Brooks, for telling me the truth. What are you going to do? I asked. I'm going to have a conversation with my husband. A very honest conversation. After Ayla left, Zara and I sat in silence for several minutes. She stared at the table where the photographs had been, as if she could still see them. How long have you known? She asked finally. I started suspecting when you made your announcement. You were too confident, too prepared for my reaction. It felt rehearsed. And you just... watched? You didn't try to stop me? Stop you from doing what? Making your own choices? I'm not your father, Zara. I'm your husband, or I was. She looked up at me sharply. Was? You made it clear that our marriage wasn't your priority anymore. I'm simply adjusting my expectations accordingly. So what happens now? I stood up and began clearing the coffee cups. Now you get to live with the consequences of your choices. Wes is going home to a wife who knows the truth. Your affair isn't a secret anymore, and I don't have to pretend I don't know what you've been doing. Brooks, please, can we talk about this? We are talking about it. I mean really talk. About us, about our marriage, about how we got here. I turned to face her. How we got here. You announced that you were seeing another man and expected me to accept it. There's no mystery about how we got here. But maybe we can fix it. Maybe we can work through this. Work through what? Your affair, your lies, or the fact that you were perfectly willing to destroy Ayla's marriage for your own happiness, Zara flinched. I didn't think about her. No, you didn't. You didn't think about anyone except yourself. That's not fair. Fair? I set the coffee cups down harder than necessary. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me you were unhappy before you started seeing someone else. Fair would have been asking for a divorce before you began your weekend routine. Fair would have been not making me look like a fool in my own marriage. I never meant to hurt you. You just didn't care if you did. Zara started crying then, quiet tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand. What do you want me to do? How do I fix this? I don't want you to do anything, and you can't fix this. There has to be something. I looked at her for a long moment, this woman I'd been married to for 8 years, who I'd thought I knew. There is something you can do. What? You can stop pretending this is something that happened to us instead of something you chose to do. My phone rang before she could respond. The caller ID showed Ayla's name. Hello? Brooks, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to ask you something. What is it? Those photographs you showed me. Do you have copies? Yes. Why? Wes is denying everything. He says you're lying, that the photos are fake, that you're trying to break us up because you're jealous of his success. I looked at Zara, who was listening to every word. Would you like me to bring them over? Would you? I know it's a lot to ask, but I need him to see that I'm not making this up. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and grabbed my keys. Zara stood up quickly. Where are you going? To help Ayla have an honest conversation with her husband. Brooks, don't do this, please. Do what? Tell the truth? Destroy my relationship with Wes. I stopped and stared at her. Your relationship with Wes was built on lies. I'm not destroying it. I'm exposing it. He loves me. He lied to you about being married. He lied to his wife about where he spends his weekends. What makes you think he's telling you the truth about anything else? Zara had no answer for that either. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. You wanted honesty, Zara. You wanted everything out in the open. Congratulations, you got it. Ayla's house was a modest Cape Cod with window boxes full of late-season flowers. I could see 2 figures through the living room window, one pacing, one sitting rigidly on the couch. Ayla answered the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red, but her jaw was set with determination. Thank you for coming. Of course. She led me into the living room where Wes Farrow sat on the edge of a leather couch, his hands clasped between his knees. He looked up when I entered, and I saw recognition flicker across his face. You're the contractor, he said, the one who's been asking questions about me around town. Brooks Carvin. I didn't offer to shake hands. Zara's husband. Wes's face went through several expressions. Surprise, calculation, and finally a kind of desperate defiance. I don't know what my wife has told you, but she hasn't told me anything I didn't already know. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. But maybe you can explain these. I handed the phone to Ayla, who held it where Wes could see the screen. The first photo showed him kissing Zara outside the Harbor View restaurant. That could be anyone, Wes said quickly. Photos can be manipulated. I swiped to the next image, a close-up shot of them getting into his car. His license plate was clearly visible. What about this one? Wes's mouth opened and closed. That's not what? Not you? Not your car? Not your girlfriend? She's not my girlfriend. Ayla made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Then what is she? It's complicated. Complicated how? I sat down across from him. You're married to Ayla. You're having an affair with Zara. What's complicated about that? You don't understand the situation. Then explain it. Wes looked between his wife and me, clearly calculating his options. Ayla and I have been having problems for months. We've grown apart. I was planning to ask for a separation. When? Ayla asked quietly. Soon. I was waiting for the right time. And in the meantime, you thought you'd test drive a replacement? It wasn't like that. I pulled out the printed timeline I'd prepared. August 15th, first documented meeting with Zara. August 22nd, dinner at Romano's. August 29th, weekend at your boat. I looked up at him. When exactly were you planning to mention your marriage problems to your wife? I was trying to protect her feelings. By lying to her for months? By not hurting her unnecessarily. Ayla stood up abruptly. Hurting me unnecessarily? Do you think this hurts less because I found out from a stranger instead of from you? Ayla, please. Please what? Please pretend I don't know. Please go back to working 16-hour days while you play house with someone else. Wes turned to me, his expression shifting from defensive to aggressive. This is your fault. You could have handled this privately, between you and your wife. Instead, you decided to blow up 2 marriages. I didn't blow up anything. I documented what was already happening. You manipulated the situation. You used Ayla to get back at Zara. I gave Ayla the same information you should have given her months ago. Information you had no right to share? I leaned forward. Information about my wife's affair? Information about your lies to both of our spouses? What part of that did I not have a right to know? Wes stood up, his hands clenched into fists. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won something here. I think I've stopped being made a fool of in my own marriage. And what about Zara? What about what she wants? What about what Ayla wants? What about what I want? This isn't about you. My marriage isn't about me. Wes took a step closer, and I could see the desperation in his eyes. You're going to regret this. Both of you. You think exposing this solves anything? You think this makes you the good guys? I think it makes us honest. It makes you vindictive. Ayla moved between us. Stop. Both of you. She looked at her husband. Wes, I want you to pack a bag and leave. Tonight. Ayla, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months. All those late nights, all those weekend work emergencies, all those times you came home and acted like nothing had happened. I'm seeing all of it differently now. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Go to Zara's house, go to a hotel, go wherever you've been planning to go when you finally worked up the courage to ask for a separation. Wes looked at me accusingly. Are you happy now? You've destroyed a 12-year marriage. You destroyed it when you started lying to your wife. And what about your marriage? You think Zara's going to forgive you for this? I don't need Zara to forgive me. I need her to understand that actions have consequences. Wes shook his head and walked toward the stairs. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Ayla said quietly. It's been over for months. I just didn't know it. After Wes left to pack, Ayla and I sat in her living room listening to him move around upstairs, drawers opening and closing, closet doors slamming, the sound of someone's life being hastily reorganized. Are you okay? I asked. No, but I'm better than I was this morning. What will you do now? I don't know. File for divorce, I suppose. Try to figure out how to run a business and rebuild my life at the same time. You don't have to do it alone. She looked at me curiously. What do you mean? I mean, you have friends now. People who understand what you're going through. People like you? People like me. Wes came downstairs carrying a suitcase and a garment bag. He stopped in the living room doorway. Ayla, I want you to know that I never meant for it to happen this way. How did you mean for it to happen? I thought I could work things out quietly. I thought I could minimize the damage. To who? To yourself? To everyone. Ayla stood up and faced him. The damage was done the moment you decided to lie to me. Everything since then has just been the cleanup. Wes looked at me one more time. Take care of her. She deserves better than what I gave her. She deserves better than what you gave her, I agreed. But she doesn't need me to take care of her. She's been taking care of herself for months while you were playing house with my wife. After Wes left, I helped Ayla change the locks on her doors. It seemed like a practical precaution, and it gave us something to do with our hands while we processed what had just happened. Do you think they'll end up together? She asked as I installed the new deadbolt. Does it matter? I suppose not, but I'm curious. They might try, but their relationship was built on secrecy and lies. It's hard to maintain that when everything's out in the open. And what about us? What happens to our friendship now? I tested the new lock and handed her the keys. That depends on what you want to happen. I want to not feel like a fool anymore. Then you're already ahead of where you were this morning. She smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. Thank you, Brooks, for everything. Thank you for being brave enough to hear the truth. When I got home, Zara was sitting at the kitchen table with her phone in her hands. She looked up when I walked in. Wes called me. And? He's staying at a hotel tonight. Ayla kicked him out. Good for her. Brooks, this is a disaster. Everything's ruined. I sat down across from her. Everything was already ruined. Now it's just honest. What are we going to do? We are going to figure out how to divide our assets and end our marriage with as much dignity as we can manage. You want a divorce? I want to stop pretending we have a marriage worth saving. Zara was quiet for a long moment. What if I ended things with Wes? What if I promised it would never happen again? Then you'd be making another promise you probably can't keep. You don't know that. I know that you spent months lying to me. I know that you were willing to destroy someone else's marriage for your own happiness. I know that when I gave you a chance to be honest about what you wanted, you chose manipulation instead. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. This was a series of deliberate choices that showed me exactly how little our marriage means to you. Zara started crying again. I love you. Maybe you do, but you love yourself more, and you love the idea of getting what you want without consequences even more than that. That's not true. Then prove it. Tell me one thing you've sacrificed for our marriage in the last 6 months. She couldn't answer. I can tell you what I sacrificed, I continued. My dignity, my trust, my ability to believe what my wife tells me. I sacrificed all of that so you could have your weekends with Wes. I never asked you to do that. You never asked me not to. We sat in silence for several minutes. Outside, I could hear the ocean waves against the rocks, the same sound that had drawn us to this house when we first got married. So, what happens now? Zara asked finally. Now you get to find out if Wes meant what he said about loving you, or if he was just telling you what you wanted to hear. And you? I get to figure out what my life looks like without someone who thinks lying is an acceptable way to solve problems. Zara nodded slowly. I suppose I deserve that. You deserve exactly what you chose. Nothing more, nothing less. She stood up and walked toward the stairs. I'll start looking for an apartment tomorrow. Take your time. We can work out the details like adults. She paused at the bottom of the stairs. Brooks? Yeah? I really am sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't change anything. I know. After she went upstairs, I sat alone in the kitchen and thought about the weekend that had just ended. 48 hours ago, I'd been a man whose wife was having an affair. Now I was a man whose marriage was over, but who had 2 new friends and a clear understanding of where he stood. It wasn't the outcome I'd wanted, but it was an honest one. And after months of lies, honesty felt like a victory all by itself.